St Moritz in Switzerland, the glamorous location for the 2023 BMW IBSF Bobsleigh and Skeleton World Championships. They've been racing down the valley from St Moritz to Cellarinia for 125 years. This all-natural track created by hand along the same route every single year, but with subtle variations. And in 2023, it was proving particularly tricky. The final heat of the men's skeleton, a case in point. Marcus Wyatt of Great Britain had been lying in the bronze medal position overnight, but a loose third heat had dropped him down to 5th position behind Jung Seung-gui of Korea. Yan Wengang, the top Chinese slider, was the leader as Wyatt came to the ice for the 4th and final time. He was building a big advantage over his Chinese rival. Good speed through the forest and high velocity down where it mattered, right at the bottom of the track. And this would be a challenge to put him into the medals potentially. 4 sleds remained, and Jung Seung-gui of Korea, who'd been 4th overnight, despite getting ahead of Wyatt, had seen himself pushed back down to 4th by another British slider. One last chance to try and grab a medal for the first time since compatriot Jung Seung-bin took silver and bronze 3 years earlier and 4 years previous. Great speed down at the bottom, not as fast as Marcus Wyatt, but enough to put him into the leader's box. A 1:07.59 final slide, a great shout for the medals. Britain's Craig Thompson had laid in 5th place overnight on a sled from coach Martin Stukus that he has never raced before. 6 practice trips and 2 more in the first day. And then on his 3rd heat of the competition, he moved up into the bronze medal position. Suddenly he was in unexpected territory. A good run through the forest, top speed coming down onto the open straight, but a big brush with the wall robbed him of that speed, and at the line it was going to be close. Jung by just 100th, guaranteed at least a bronze medal. Into the final 2 sleds, and the big revelation of the World Championships, without any question, the performance of the young Italian Amedeo Bagnis. The 23-year-old had never previously been in the top 6, even in a World Championship outing, and yet from the very first heat, he was a definite medal contender. 2nd fastest in the field. In the first heat, he held the silver medal position overnight, and as he put Jung behind him, guaranteed himself and Italy their first ever World Championship medal. 1 sled to go. Unbelievably, Amedeo Bagnis led the race. Italy had made history. Could Great Britain's Matt Weston do the same? 3 World Cup victories under his belt this season from a career total of 4. He's on an absolute high. 2 race wins in Altenburg in success leading into St Moritz, including the European Championship gold. But the last man to win on this track from Great Britain was back in 2008, Kristen Bromley, who was also then the European and the World Champion. Matt Weston led all the way through all 4 heats to claim the gold medal, the first British man to do so since 2008, and he seems unstoppable. The leader right from the start of the competition, Matt Weston felt no pressure as he raced away from the field, leaving them trailing in his wake. Gold for Great Britain, silver for Italy, and bronze by 100th for Korea. With 1 set of medals already in the bag for the day, Friday afternoon saw the women's skeleton race come to its conclusion. After a crazy first day of racing, 4-time world champion Tina Hermann lay in 6th position after the first 3 runs. Into the final heat, she was trying to stay ahead of another German world champion, Jacqueline Lerling, in what may well be Jacka's final ever race. Lerling, the 27 world champion, Hermann, the 4 times world champion, but neither were likely to score a medal here in St Moritz. The German machine misfiring in the men's race, race, and in the women's it seemed Tina had enough to creep ahead of Jacka, but not enough to make a big impact. Canada's Mimi Reneva had been in the silver medal position overnight, but a loose third run had dropped her down to 5th position. This is a track she has won on twice in World Cup races, but this season she was struggling to piece it together. More skids early on in her run. Looked as though they were consigning her to a position off the podium, but she found speed down through the forest, and towards the bottom of her run, the Bromley sled that she uses was absolutely flying. She had enough in hand comfortably to take the lead away from Tina Hermann. She would just have to wait to see what the remaining 4 sliders could produce. Among them, Austria's Janine Flock, the veteran, started in her first World Championships back in 2008. Partner Matthias Guggenberger was rushed to hospital the night before the final runs, but seemed to be okay, so Janine was trying to put that behind her as well and focus on fighting her way into the medals. A strong third run had given her a hope, but the 4th run gave it away once more. She was never quite on terms with Reneva, and she dropped behind. Janine Flock would not be on the podium in St. Moritz. Reneva would still lead as we got to the final 2 sleds. Her teammate Jen Charrell had dropped out of medal contention with a loose 4th run. But Kimberly Boss had driven herself from 5th place overnight into the silver medal position with a great 3rd heat. And the 4th looked to be just as strong. 2 little mistakes down in the fast part of the track. She still had plenty of speed on board. She would comfortably be the race leader with just 1 slider remaining. The Olympic bronze medalist from Beijing, to the delight of her mum and dad, had the lead and was guaranteed a medal. Susanne Kreher of Germany. Her home track in Altenburg, her first senior world championship appearance, though she's raced in St. Moritz in 2 junior worlds, taking a bronze and a silver. She led after the first heat, and after the second, and after the third. And if she had nerves, they didn't show until late in the run, and then suddenly mistakes crept in. The gap was tiny, the speed was good, it was impossible to tell who was going to take it to the 100th of a second, Kimberly Boss or Susanne Kreher, and it was the young German in her first senior world championship that saved German blushes. The men had misfired horribly, the women had had a disaster. Susanne Kreher, the world champion, single-handedly rescued their skeleton weekend. Susanne Kreher by 100 from Kimberly Boss, with Mimi Reneva of Canada completing the podium. Sunday began bright and early in St. Moritz. Well, early anyway, for the skeleton teams competition, for the first time featuring a brand new starting system. Among the favourites, Italy, with Valentina Margaglio, their female slider, one of their 2 teams. Valentina finished only 14th after 4 disappointing runs in the individual competition, and she had 1 chance to try and gather it all together. A good run from her to start the 2 legs for Italy 1. Her teammate was Amadeo Bagnis. A good response time from him. He claimed the individual silver medal in the Men's World Championships, and that put his team among the favourites. If he could repeat that form, they should be in with a shot at the podium. A good run from Bagnis. They comfortably pushed the Swiss athletes out of the box. They were only the 5th team on ice. As we got down to China, the 12th duo to start, Xiaodan, who'd finished in 12th position in the women's race, the first to go. She would need to match Valentina Margaglio, because then her teammate, Yang Wengang, would have to beat the silver medalist. So giving him a 1400s advantage was a really good start to their competition. They'd been about the 5th ranked of our teams coming in here, so Yang Wengang up against Amadou Banyas knew that he had work to do. But before the midway point, their early advantage had gone. Banyas' run had been superb, and the Chinese simply couldn't match it. Italy remained on top. Next team to the block, the second of the two British teams, Brogan Crowley, who finished 18th, and Craig Thompson, who was 100th out of the medals in the men's competition. For Brogan, a chance for redemption, and with a fast start and a really nice-looking run, she seized it with both hands. In a head-to-head against Valentina Margallo, who had finished 4 spots ahead of her, she thrashed her by 0.4 of a second. And that meant that Craig Thompson, on a brand new sled who was only 100th out of the medals in the men's competition, would have a cushion. He didn't need it. On a sled that he'd never raced before the St. Moritz weekend, he was absolutely flying again. The 30-year-old, with a 4th best position in the men's competition, put his team into the leaders' box with a hope of a medal. They remained the leaders as their teammates Laura Dees and Matt Weston came to the line. Laura Dees, the Olympic bronze medalist in 2018 in women's skeleton, was back to something approaching her previous best in the women's competition, finishing in 9th. Before the midway point, she had taken the lead by just a whisker. So what would the newly crowned world champion do? Matt Weston made a good reaction to the lights and had a very quick start. It would turn out to be the fastest in the competition. But below Horseshoe, 3 critical errors, robbing the sled of speed. It would be enough to put their teammates behind at the line. Was it enough for gold?
Not the best run, but we're winning.
GB remained 1-2 as we got to our final team. The first of the German duos had dropped by the wayside as we got to Suzanne Kreher, the women's gold medalist, teamed up with Christopher Groothair, a double world and Olympic champion. Kreher, as she had done in the singles competition, absolutely flew down the St. Moritz ice. Whatever else was going on with their skeleton team, nothing affected her. She took the advantage, and it was up to Christopher Groothair to convert it. Groothair has not been in the best of form here in St. Moritz, but in the final slide of the competition for the skeleton Olympic champion, he finally pulled it out of the bag, drawing level and clinching gold by 1300ths. Germany continue with their skeleton team gold run, their 3rd in a row. Great Britain taking the silver and the bronze, their first ever medals in the team's championship. The 2 individual world champions, Suzanne Kreher and Matt Weston, both on the team's podium. The battle of the Olympic champions came down to the top of the pile in the Monobob sort-out Heat 4, featuring the reigning champion and the reigning women's bobsled champion at the top of the pile. Into the 4th and final heat in the Monobob Worlds, and Kim Kalicki looking for another medal. The German driver in the top 5 after the first 3 of 4 heats, ahead of Canadian Cynthia Appiah, who had moved herself into the top 6 with her final run. Flying down through the forest, Kalicki, an ace in the regular 2-seat bobsleds, but still struggling to find the key to success in the monobobs, had better speed than her Canadian rival and would paint herself firmly into a top 5 finish. Australia's Brianna Walker is one of the leading lights in women's monobob. She won't race in the 2-seat sleds in the second week of the championship, so this is her only chance of a medal. Just outside the podium overnight, in the 3rd run, that gap had grown a fraction, but a strong starter, the Aussie also is a great driver. She needed to be absolutely perfect on the St. Moritz ice, but a couple of mistakes crept in early on. She didn't have the speed she needed in the final corners. She had enough to overhaul Kalicki, but was it enough for the medals? With 3 to go, Germany's Lisa Buchwitz. In the bronze medal position, she has 1 medal in World Cup racing in her monobob career, yet to really unlock the key to success. But the Olympic champion in 2018 as a push athlete has been driving for the very first time in public this year and is really starting to rack up the results. With a bronze medal tucked under her belt overnight, she solidified her position with the 4 feet and confirmed herself as a podium finisher for the very first time as a driver in the World Championships. A huge moment for Lisa Buchwitz. Would it be a huge moment for the reigning world and Olympic monobob champion Kaylee Humphries? A multiple world champion and 2-time Olympic champion in women's bob, she is also the top scorer over the last 2 seasons in the mono. But an unfortunate 3rd heat and not the tidiest 4th meant that she slipped further away from the lead. A drift down the straight on her final run meant that Kaylee would take at least a silver medal, but she would need the overnight leader Lara Nolte to make big errors to give her the gold. So the pressure was on Nolte. 4th in the Olympic Games in the monobob, though she took the women's bobsleigh gold, Nolte has struggled in the early part of this season to get to grips with the lighter sled. But all of that changed on her first trip to Lake Placid in December. She took gold then and has not been off the podium since. And on perhaps the toughest version of this hand-built track in years, Lara Nolte never looked back. She was fastest in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd and 4th heats to claim a comfortable World Championship gold. And after the disappointment of the monobob Olympic competition, she was delighted. Lara Nolte, the world champion from Kaylee Humphries and Lisa Buchwitz. Nolte now goes in with 1 gold round her neck to the women's race in a week's time. Perhaps the most eagerly awaited clash of the entire fortnight and certainly of the first week of competition in St. Moritz was the conclusion of the 2-man bobsleigh. Mattia Variola, one of those who found out at the hard way. In the 3rd and the 4th run, the Italian brakeman who's converted to the front seat to become a driver rolled off the final corner, searching for that last kilometre an hour of top speed. He was okay, and his brakeman too, as they moved up the top 20. Into the deciding runs at the top of the pile, Christoph Hafer, the Olympic bronze medalist, with Matthias Sommer behind him, his Olympic bronze medal winning brakeman, in 5th place overnight after being in the shade of the top 3 on the first day. A good run in the final heat would challenge Great Britain's Brad Hall, who lay in 4th place. Hafer just easing ahead of the sensational young Latvian Emers Tsipoulis, who rounded out his worlds in a fine 6th place. Hafer's strong final run put the pressure on Brad Hall and Taylor Lawrence. Their starts had been impeccable, 2nd fastest in the field, but in the final run, the rear of Brad's sled was just skidding too much, dragging speed out of him in almost every corner. By the time he got down to the fastest part of the track, he was hemorrhaging pace. And in the end, Christoph Hafer's run proved just too much for him to match. 700s back, no medal this time out. Half a lead with the final 3 sleds remaining. Fastest man in the first of the 4 heats had been Switzerland's Mickey Vogt. He'd been in 3rd place overnight, challenging Francesco Friedrich and the leader Johannes Lochner. But Friedrich and Vogt had slipped back to a phenomenal run from Lochner in the 3rd heat. Now it was all about trying to take silver from the reigning and 7-time world champion Francesco Friedrich. Vogt with the fastest speed down the run. He'd done what he had. He was in the medals. Only time would tell whether 7-time world champion and 2-time 2-man Olympic champion Francesco Friedrich with last year's winner Alexander Schuller would have enough. This is where he won his first World Championships in 2013 in the 2-man, the youngest ever to do so, but he was staring defeat in the face. It wasn't the adductor strain he's been struggling with for the last month that let him down, it was his driving. Uncharacteristic errors creeping into every run. He took the lead from Vogt by just 1/100th with 1 sled to go. The final run was that of Johannes Lochner and Georg Fleischhauer. Paired together for the first time this season in 2-man, they have not lost when they've raced together. A shattering 3rd heat on the final day of competition from Lochner led him a long way ahead of his rivals, but the 4th was awful. By Hansi's standards, hitting everything in sight. Luckily, with nearly 7/10 in the bank, he had plenty in sight, and for the first time in his career, he is a 2-man world champion. Following in the footsteps of the great Christoph Langen, the last Bavarian to win, that was here in 2013, and his uncle Rudi Lochner, a 2-man world champion in 1991. Francesco Friedrich, the first to offer his congratulations. Lochner, the world champion, from Friedrich and Vogt, a tiny margin between silver and bronze. But Hansi, head and shoulders clear of the field. A great week of action to round out week 1 in St. Moritz, with more to come in week 2, the Parabob, women's bobsleigh and 4-man competitions.